Hello everybody, welcome in. This is the Tucker Meyer Show. So, some exciting things coming up, and my favorite time of the week, and should be yours too, we get to your questions that you kindly sent in to the Tucker Meyer Show. But before I get into anything, I just want to point out something real quick that would make us feel a little at ease. So I've noticed on social media that the World War III memes have actually been going down. The volume of them has just been going down, as I've noticed. Meme accounts aren't keep posting about it, but there's still accounts that I will follow who post on their stories Iran stuff, but there's not all these World War III memes as much as there used to be. But I know there's still people out there thinking like, oh my gosh, there's still war. There's going to be a war. Right? I know there's people still freaking out about that. We saw the whole group of millennials who crashed the Selective Service website because so many of them were freaking out that they were going to be drafted. And I went over that on my last episode. But we all know that there's not going to be a World War III. Okay. And whatever the crazy media or your teachers tell you, there's not going to be a World War III, or we're not going to go to war with Iran either, okay? But then people are like, oh wait, but Iran shot missiles at the United States yesterday, or at U.S. bases, didn't they? Well, here's the thing. Ben Shapiro over the Daily Wire points out that the Iranian attack where they launched the missiles at, those were at Iraqi bases. They were not U.S. bases. So, because these are Iraqi bases where there are coalitions of soldiers. There are coalition soldiers at these Iraqi bases, okay? So, that's a difference, okay? They weren't U.S. bases. They were sending missiles over to Iraqi bases where there are coalition soldiers. So, I pointed out, okay. Secondly, to pretend that this whole thing where Iran is trying to kill Americans and chanting death to America, this has been going on for decades, okay? It's not Donald Trump who is starting this whole outrage. It's not. The media sucks. So, yeah. So just point that out, okay? Everything's all good. And there's not going to be World War III. In order for there to be a World War III, there has to be predicted of mass casualties, and there has to be other coalitions, such as, Japan and Europe, but in the coalition of the war, but really that's not going to happen, okay? And I know no one in the United States wants to go to war. No one does. Not even Iran, because they know that they're going to get obliterated by the United States if they dare to do anything. If they dare to go to war, if they kill an American, they kill any Americans, they will get destroyed, just like we killed Soleimani. After what he was going to do to the embassy, etc., when they tried burning it down. So that is the thing. We're not going to go to war with Iran. So all you other, just don't worry. There's not going to be World War III. Okay, Iran doesn't want to go to war with us. We don't want war. We're not warmongers like Hillary Clinton. Okay, so just point out there. Okay, so what I really want to get today was actually California's homeless crisis. For those of you who live in California, you see this appear on the news, right, quite often. Homeless problem. And if you live in California, you see it yourself, especially Southern California, especially, if you're in Los Angeles, San Francisco. But if you're in California, you know the homeless crisis. And if you don't live in California, you may have heard of it, may have not, but it's on our local news quite often, and you see it. So this is according to calmatters.org. They kind of go in depth about the homeless problem. So first off, so they say the large rising number of residents who lack a safe place to call home In a state with vast amounts of wealth, more than 150,000 of its residents sleep in shelters, cars, or on the street. The United Nations compared the tent encampments of San Francisco to the slums of New Delhi and Mexico City. Nearly 5,000 people live in the half square mile of Los Angeles' Skid Row. And while the problem is most acute in California's urban centers, homelessness is now a common fixture in many of the state's suburbs and rural towns. State and local officials have pledged billions in recent years to help, but voters remain frustrated by a lack of visible progress. Okay. So, yes, and there's a lack of visible process. Eric Garcetti said, a long time ago, we're gonna fix the homeless problem. Yeah, we'll get it taken care of. Well, there's nothing. It just keeps getting worse, right? And then you have people like Adam Shifty Shift and Nervous Nancy Pelosi who are out there, and their state and their districts look horrible. Feces, tents, needles, garbage. And what makes people think they can actually run the country? Okay, if they can't even run their own state, their own district, what makes you think they can run the entire United States? You don't know. I don't know. Who knows? So it's pretty bad. And here's the thing too: California, we're very nice to the homeless. For example, Long Beach, it's a homeless-friendly city. They can't kick you out for being homeless. So basically, you're able to live on the streets, right? You're able to, San Francisco made it. You're able to urinate on the street. There's people, human feces on the street, urinating on the street, needles on the street, garbage everywhere. And these are the politicians, these are the Democrats who care so dear much about the environment. We must save the environment. Okay, well, look at these people's districts. Gavin Newsom, radical and Gavin Newsom wants to fight climate change. Well, and he wants to fight to keep the environment clean and safe. Okay, well, where is that? There's feces. There's human feces on the sidewalk. There's trash everywhere. It just doesn't make any sense. That's what you get for electing Democrats. California is not the place it used to be 20, 30 years ago when we were a red state. Okay, so how many people are homeless? A last official count was 151,278 individuals are homeless in California, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's the highest number since at least 2007 and represents a nearly 17% uptick since 2018. The number of unsheltered Californians living on the streets or in cars has surged the past year. California. So here's a chart of the California homelessness this decade. Official homelessness statistics only come from one-night counts, a volunteer-led snapshot of the number of people experiencing homelessness one night in January. Experts say this method likely underestimates the unsheltered and doesn't capture the total number of people who fall into homelessness over the course of a year, which could be 2 or 3 times higher. It's not surprising that California, the largest state, has the highest homeless population in the country, but while about 1 in 9 Americans lives in California, roughly 1 in 4 homeless Americans lives here. New York and Hawaii have slightly higher per capita rates of homelessness, but California has the largest proportion of people living without shelter. That means the state's homeless population is far more visible than in other places, and more vulnerable to the illness, violence, and death that accompany living on the street. And although states such as Texas and New York have seen a slight uptick in their homeless counts since last year, California saw the largest proportional swell of any state besides New Mexico. The Trump administration is quick to point out that the country would have seen an overall decline in homelessness if California and Oregon were excluded from the count. Alright, so this is pretty bad, just even what I've just read for you guys so far. So here's another interesting thing. So, are these homeless people local, or are they coming from somewhere else? Well, this says, one of the more enduring myths about California's homeless population is that the vast majority have traveled here from other states. seeking generous government assistance, and whether more hospitable to living outdoors. It's a baseless claim perpetuated by both sides of the aisle. Gavin Newsom has made it repeatedly. While comprehensive statewide data is lacking, local surveys indicate people living on the streets are typically from the surrounding neighborhood. Example, 70% of San Francisco's homeless people were housed somewhere in the city when they lost housing. Only 8% came from out of state. 3/4 of Los Angeles County's homeless population lived in the region before becoming homeless. So you can see the majority of people are actually from California. So here's a chart of San Francisco's homelessness population. 70% from San Francisco. Other part of California is 22%, and 8% are out of state. All right. So there's little evidence to suggest documented immigrants constitute a large share of California's homeless population, but those that are unhoused are particularly difficult to help. Crucial safety net resources such as Social Security, Section 8 housing vouchers, and food stamps are unavailable to the undocumented who often resist engagement with homeless services providers because of deportation fears. Language and cultural barriers are complicate rehousing efforts. So, okay, here's a little issue with that, with the immigration thing. So, you can be here illegally, and let's say I have a child here. So they're born here. Okay, I come here legally with my wife. And we have a child here. Under the 14th Amendment, they're just solely, so they are American citizens under the 14th Amendment. They're U.S. citizens. So what that means, now that my child is a citizen, my wife and I, who are illegal, are eligible for housing vouchers, like it mentions here, Section 8 housing vouchers, food stamps, cash aid, the kid can go to school for free. So... and their kids' Social Security. So that's just kind of a little hazy, that comment right there. Which is why I'm a fan of kind of redoing the 14th Amendment. Okay. So now, what's a huge cause of it? Well, let's get into this. CalMatters.org itself even says high rents are driving up homelessness. Mental health problems, addiction, childhood trauma, interaction with the criminal justice system, and poverty all play significant roles in whether someone becomes homeless. But the primary reason? They can no longer afford rent. About 1.3 million California renter households are considered extremely low income, making less than $25,000 a year, according to the California Housing Partnership, a nonprofit organization that the state created to advise affordable housing builders. Particularly, these financially strapped households can barely afford the state's escalating rents and are more at risk of falling into homelessness. Yeah, well, we all know, and everyone knows, California is very expensive. We pay the highest taxes in the nation. I mean, the highest gas prices. Everything here is just expensive. Fueled by decades of underproduction, California's stock of naturally occurring affordable housing is dwindling as shoddy older apartments that used to house lower income families are increasingly taken by higher income tenants. Government subsidizing housing has not filled the gap. That's partly because doing so would be insanely expensive. The nonpartisan legislative and analyst's office estimates that building new housing for every low-income Californian who needs it would cost $15 to $30 billion annually. That's what the state currently spends on Medi-Cal, its massive program to provide health care to the poor, which covers a third of the state's residents. Well, Gavin Newsom putting a lot of this money towards illegal aliens, right? He wants to put $98 million for free health care for illegal aliens. So we could use that $98 million maybe for this. Maybe, just maybe. All right. What about mental illness and addiction? Okay. Advocates for homeless people are leery of casting too much blame for the state's crisis on mental health and substance abuse issues. They argue that plenty of low-income residents in other states struggle with drug addiction and debilitating psychological conditions. They simply manage to remain off the streets because the cheapest renter. Well, but recent data suggests that these issues are more prevalent among people experiencing homelessness than previously reported, especially for those living on the street. About half of the unsheltered nationally report that mental health and/or substance abuse contributed to their loss of housing. A Los Angeles Times investigation found 2/3 of LA County's residents living on the street suffer from a psychological or substance abuse disorder, far more than what's been reported in official statistics that exclude mental disorders that aren't long-term. So if your teacher professor tells you that, it's a myth that the majority of homeless, out there in California are mentally ill, well, it's not a myth, it's true. You just saw 2/3 of LA County's residents, homeless, right, suffer from a psychological or substance abuse disorder. So, okay. Methamphetamine use is up across the West Coast and is often to blame for some of the most visible episodes of homelessness seen on California streets. Unfortunately, physicians say meth addiction is confoundingly difficult to treat. While methadone is available to wean heroin addicts off of opioids, no such replacement medication exists for meth. Okay, that's not great. Okay, other factors that cause homelessness. Survivors of domestic violence are among those at high risk of homelessness. One California study found that women reporting an episode of domestic violence were 4 times more likely to suffer housing instability than other women. The formerly incarcerated, ineligible for many public housing programs, are frequently a target of discrimination in the rental housing market, often take refuge in emergency shelters or on the streets. While comprehensive California data is lacking, one study by a criminal justice reform advocacy group found that people who have been in jail or prison are 10 times more likely to experience homelessness than the general public. Youth aging out of the foster care system likely constitute a significant share of more than 11,000 homeless young adults in California. One study found 30% of former foster care children in the Midwest were homeless at least once before age 24. Lacking family support networks and often victims of childhood traumas, about 25% of California's foster youth transitioning into adulthood live in precarious housing situations. Okay. So those are the other factors that cause it. Now here's a thing with emergency shelters and permanent supportive housing. So there's this. California has a patchwork of government-provided housing for people experiencing homelessness. While the nomenclature varies from city to city, the two most prevalent and important categories of housing are emergency shelters and permanent supportive housing. Emergency shelters. These are any facilities that provide temporary shelter for people experiencing homelessness. At their most basic, they are barracks-like arrangement of costs and provide a bed and a meal. Typically, they are operated by publicly funded nonprofit and religious organizations. Many shelters bar residents from staying with partners or pets and are often viewed by homeless people as dangerous and dirty, even compared to sleeping on the streets. A KPCC investigation of Los Angeles area shelters last year found reports of rats, bedbugs, foul odors, and harassment rampant at several shelters. But while shelter beds frequently go unused in LA County, while transportation is also a complicating factor, overall, the state has a major shortage. Federal funding has shifted away from emergency shelters over the last decade, causing the Bay Area, for example, to lose 1,700 shelter beds since 2011, according to the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. San Francisco and Los Angeles have tried to reinvent emergency shelters, equipping them with health and social services providers who can help guide residents to more stable housing outcomes. According to city officials, more than 50% of the short-term residents of San Francisco's navigation centers, which are tailored to high-needs clients, are ultimately placed in housing. Emergency shelters are generally much cheaper to build than permanent supportive housing, but new projects often run into stringent community opposition. Okay, so now this is a chart that says how expensive is building new homeless housing. So this is the difference between temporary economic communities, then emergency shelters, converted motels, and then new supportive housing, significantly more expensive. Look at that. All right, homelessness experts argue that emergency shelters are mostly just a band-aid permanent supportive housing in the long-term solution. Usually targeted at the chronically homeless, this offers a highly subsidized apartment paired with support services including psychological counseling, substance abuse rehab, and job training. Permanent supportive housing is a pillar of the housing first model of ending homelessness. Individuals don't need to quit drugs or agree to participate in any program to get a permanent roof over their head. Studies show that once placed in permanent supportive housing, residents tend to stay off the streets and out of the hospital and jail, saving taxpayers considerable expense. But here's just one problem with that. Permanent supportive housing is really expensive to build. In Los Angeles, a recent estimate from the city auditor put the median cost of building one unit at more than $530,000. A new project coming online in San Jose is estimated to pencil out at roughly $470,000 per unit. The outrageous price tags aren't just driven by land cost. A shortage of construction labor and prolonged city approval processes are also to blame. Cities including Oakland have recently begun buying and converting single-room occupancy hotels to sidestep prohibitively high new construction costs. Preventing homeless. How can we do this? Well, let's see. Many California cities have made significant strides in moving people from streets and shelters into safe, stable housing. The Los Angeles Housing Services Authority, buoyed by fresh state and local funds approved by voters, estimated that it was able to place more than 20,000 people experiencing homelessness into housing last year. So why did LA's county homeless population still grow 12% between 2018 and 2019? Because an estimated 55,000 residents simultaneously lost a place to live, according to Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. Another estimate puts the number closer to 34,000. San Francisco officials say for every homeless person they house, another 3 fall into homelessness, much to the jargon of local politicians trying to prove taxpayer money is being spent effectively. New shelters and supportive housing will have trouble making a dent in visible homelessness unless the spigot is plugged in the first place. All right, states and local governments across the country, including California, are devoting a rising share of homelessness resources to prevention strategies. These include eviction counseling and defense, emergency rental assistance, and diversion and rapid rehousing. Okay, now this is very interesting. Is it legal for someone to sleep on the sidewalk or other public property? A landmark federal court case says yes, if there aren't shelter beds available. Allowed to stand by the Supreme Court in late 2019, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the far left-leaning radical appeals court, ruling in Martin v. City of Boise, held that ticketing, arresting, or otherwise criminalizing people living outside violates constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment, the Eighth Amendment. Several California cities and counties filed amicus briefs urging the Supreme Court to reverse the decision, arguing it would hamstring efforts to clear homeless encampments that posed serious public health and safety risks, just like I was saying earlier. The impact of the Boise decision remains unclear. Police departments and sheriffs still can enforce various quality of life ordinances as well as bans against public defecation and drug use. Many advocates say issuing citations against these behaviors is counterproductive because people experiencing homelessness have few resources to pay off city fines, and brief incarceration episodes only add to housing instability. Homeless puts enormous financial and resource strains on California police and sheriff departments. A recent audit of how Los Angeles spends homeless dollars found over 50% went to law enforcement. Several police departments have created units dedicated to interacting with homeless populations, often pairing cops with social workers. Sweeps also take a toll on unsheltered people who can lose what little belongings they still have, including sleeping bags, family photographs, and medicine. So what is the state really doing about homelessness? Because we're not seeing much, right? Well, here, as homelessness has soared in California, so has state spending on programs to address it, especially in the last 3 years. In 2018, then Governor Jerry Brown directed $500 million to emergency homelessness funding in response to a plea for help from mayors of the state's 11 largest cities. That same year, voters passed Prop 1, a $4 billion bond that funds affordable housing construction. They also passed Proposition 2, a $2 billion bond to fund supportive housing for people with mental illness. In his first year, Governor Gavin Newsom upped the ante on homeless spending. He designed a record $1 billion of his 2019-2020 budget to one-time investments combating homelessness on top of $1.75 billion to expand California's affordable housing stock. The budget includes funding to increase welfare grants for low-income families with children, to house mentally ill patients who are homeless or at risk, and to rapidly rehouse college students who become homeless. Newsom's 2020 budget proposes even more, $1.4 billion. Much of the money would go to a one-time flexible fund that providers of homeless services could tap directly, bypassing local governments for whatever programs they deem most helpful. Emergency rental assistance, new board and care facilities for the mentally ill, etc. Newsom also directed state agencies to review what public land could be converted to emergency housing and deployed 100 camp trailers from the state fleet as temporary shelters. Okay, so for this, we're seeing $650 million for homeless emergency aid for cities and counties. And then it goes to increase welfare grants to low-income families with children, $331,500,000. Then we're seeing $120 million for fund housing for mental health care pilot programs. Then we're seeing $25 million for fund housing for homeless families with children in foster care. $14.7 million for expand housing assistance for welfare recipients, and then $3,900,000 support for housing and food insecure California community college students. There's just a lot more we don't have time for, but I hope that gives you guys a better idea of really what this homeless problem is. Politicians really could be doing more and a lot, but Gavin Newsom wants to spend money just on illegal aliens and just to make the California government even bigger, and it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. The homeless crisis is pretty bad. I do feel for these people. I just wish our politicians would take more action on it. So that'd be nice. And I mean, it's unpleasant how bad California has become now. So expensive, and that's why you're seeing so many people becoming homeless. You can live in the street for free, basically, right? Free living, but it's undesirable living. Free but undesirable. All right, guys. Now it is that time of week. We get to the questions that you sent to the Tucker Meyer Show. Your questions will be answered right now. Now, before we get into the questions, I just want to make a quick announcement. I need you guys to go over and follow our Instagram page at TMShow20 for updates, exclusive content, live Q&As, and you can send us your question that you want answered right now live on the show through Instagram page as well, through DM. So you can all do that at TMShow20. That's TMSHOW20. Go do that. Follow it right now. It's a great, beautiful thing. TMSHOW20. Go do it now. It's great. All right, so now let's get to the questions. Okay, first question comes from Jerry. Jerry says, "Where is Joe?" I don't know, Jerry. Where is Joe? All right, thanks for the question. Number 2 comes from Broderick from North Korea. What do you think about the recent controversy about Trump's involvement in Iran? So my whole thing about this is I'm actually glad we did it. It was great. We killed literally the worst person on this planet. He's killed hundreds of Americans, thousands of innocent civilians. He's caused war, responsible for the war in Yemen, armed terrorist groups and regimes. He's a terrible person. I'm glad we did it. And what we did was a deterrence for Iran to do more things to the United States, saying, if you mess with us, we'll mess with you. And we did. And that was something that was lost under the Obama administration, because what Obama did, he was shipping $150 billion over to terrorists, over to Iran. And that is not the same as, it's not the same. That's more of appeasement, what he's doing, that he did. It's better to have deterrence so that they don't mess with us, right? And Iran was getting more powerful with all that money, building their weapons and their military, all this stuff. So I'm glad what we did. And here's the thing, I don't remember all this controversy when Obama dropped 26,171 bombs on the Middle East, or when 2,800 of those were without congressional approval, and 90% of those killed in those attacks were civilians. Where was the controversy on that? I don't know. So, yeah, but that's my other thing. I'm glad we did it, and Iran's going down if they ever try and pick another fight with us. Okay. Third question comes from Teresa. Teresa says, do you have a girlfriend? Thank you for the question, Teresa. I do not. Next question. Number 4. This question comes from Andrew. Opinion on climate change. Okay, so here's my whole thing on climate change, is that it's not as big of a deal as politicians and the media proclaim it to be. Politicians are going around saying, we have 12 years left to solve it. And then now they keep moving the years down to 10 to 8. Now it's even 6, some say. 6 years left to solve it. But the average answer now is 8 years. That's what we're seeing the 2020 Democratic candidates say. We have 8 to 12 years to solve climate change. Vote for us, and we'll change the weather. And then they have, then they have high school dropouts, come and yell at politicians to change the weather. Greta Thunberg, and that's going to do anything. The Nazis actually used to use little micros with pigtails like that to go and spread Nazi propaganda. Well, we're seeing Greta Thunberg, the same person, spreading. Democrats using little female to spread propaganda. Okay, and it's just honestly stupid why they say we have 12 years left, because what these people don't really remember, or they even don't know, is that they were saying all this stuff ranging back to the mid-1900s. Early 1900s. Remember? Okay, 1970. Oh, we're going to have acid. There's going to be acid rain in 1980. Okay, that didn't happen. 1980. Oh, there's going to be another ice age. Oh my gosh. I don't see an ice age. Okay, and then then they were going to say, oh my gosh, 1990. There's going to be any more snowfall. Oh my gosh. Okay, that happened. Then 1990 again. Okay, we have to do something about climate change, or else there's gonna melt, and there's gonna be no more, right? The Earth hasn't melted. Then we were hearing again, okay, we have to do something about there's not gonna be any more snowfall by 2000s. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, wasn't it just snowing last summer? Wasn't it just snowing into the season of summer? It was snowing in June in Colorado, wasn't it? Yeah. 2002, Al Gore. Oh my gosh, we have to do something about climate change. If we don't do anything in the next 10 to 12 years, the Earth is going to turn into a frying pan, and we're going to lose millions of people each day. Okay, well, it's 2020 now, and we've actually saw record cold temperatures kind of last year in the East Coast, ranging from negative 40s to negative 70s. Yeah, that's not a frying pan. And now you got crazy AOC spreading. Well, first she said 12, and then she moved it all the way down to 6 years. These buffoons, people believing all of this crap. It's just no. There's no, and actually the U.S. climate emissions are actually decreasing. They've decreased 19.6% since the 1990s. So, but the media's not going to tell you that, right? And everyone points fingers at the U.S. while China's and India's climate emissions go up. But so that's my thing on climate change. It's not as big as a deal of people making it seem, and yeah, it's not that big of a threat, so that's my whole thing on climate change. So thank you for the question. Hart Graham Dios says, this question number 5 says, what's the number one incident dramatized by the Democratic pacifists? Okay, so the number one incident that's dramatized by the Democratic pacifists would have to be probably the United States dropping, probably killing Soleimani, literally the worst person in the world, like I kind of just mentioned in the second question. Um, but the people are siding. But I'm just going around. No one wants to go to war, though. No one wants to go to war, right? At least the majority of Americans don't want. I don't want to go to war. Trump doesn't want to go to war, right? But I know Hillary Clinton, the warmonger, does. But anyways, that's my thing. That's the number one dramatized event. I'm saying probably them bombing Soleimani. Then the media and all the Democrats are siding with the terrorists in Iran. It's like, why don't you go? Why don't you live in Iran if you feel so bad that we killed a terrorist who killed hundreds of Americans, thousands, tens of thousands of other people? Yeah, so that's one incident probably dramatized by them, I'd say. All right, thank you for the question. Number 6 comes from Andreas. Why is feminism stupid? Okay, thanks for the question, Andreas. Here's my whole thing on feminism. So feminism has been good in the past, right? It's got women into the workforce, got them the right to vote, got them to partake in the military, etc. Nowadays, what we're seeing is more of like a third wave feminism, radical feminism, as I call it. And what we're seeing now is just more of an anti-men movement. And it's just women. These women are fighting for rights that they already have. I mean, really. And it's like feminism right now is just covering up all the amazing benefits things women have accomplished over the years. For example, women are doing far better than men in America right now. I mean, single women in their 20s make 18% more than men. 83% of financial decisions are made by women. 40% of family breadwinners are women. Women are far less likely to declare bankruptcy, far less likely to commit crimes, far less likely to commit suicide. I mean, just last year, 58% of all PhD grads were women. Women graduate higher rates from school than men. So across the board, women are doing so much better than men in America. But feminism is covering that up, and they're making themselves oppressed. They're making themselves feel miserable about it. Okay? And just letting you feminists out there know, who are fighting for equal pay, it is illegal to pay a woman less than a man just because of it's illegal to pay someone solely based on their gender under the Equal Pay Act of 1963. Just letting you know that. Okay. But yeah, so that's my thing on feminism. Okay. And we're seeing at these women's marches now, that they used to be, give us the right to vote, give us workforce. That was good. But now these women's marches, it's like you see a woman holding a sign saying men are pigs, and there's a woman holding a sign next to her saying women are equal to men. Men and women are completely different. They make different career choices. They make different decisions, different personalities. So you can't always say they're. I mean, it's just kind of a mess, and people believe everything, right? The media loves these women's marches, and it's more of an anti-men. Oh, men are the reason for all of women's problems. They're all society's problems. White men in particular, it's always the white men's fault. And then it's more of anti-Trump movement. Trump sucks. He's terrible. He's suppressing women, even though right now under Trump, women's unemployment rate is record low. Women's wages are going up for the first time in 10 years. More women are working now than ever before. Feminism is it's poison to our society right now. I think feminism I'd rather see them brag about how much better they're doing than men. I'd rather see them celebrating it rather than pretending that they have not accomplished anything. So it's complete delusion to its finest extent. It's just feminism's just nah. So yeah, but thanks for the question. All right, this 7th question comes from Rudy. Should we bomb Iran? Bro, we already did. Thank you for the question, Rudy. This next question comes from Jose. Should abortion be legal? Okay, here's my thing on abortion. So I personally don't. I do not like the idea of killing a baby because you don't want it. Now, there's the whole thing saying, okay, well, rape. What about rape and incest? Well, the thing with rape and incest is that's less than that's like 1% of all abortion cases. Okay, 92% of abortion cases are due to unwanted pregnancies, right? Like just I don't want the baby. Oh, I don't feel ready for it. Let me just kill it. That I'm not okay with. Okay, then 3% is because the baby has some sort of medical condition that's affecting the mother, and then the other 4% is due to because the woman is having a 4.3% is because the woman is having has a medical condition that's affecting the baby. So So yeah, but you can't take the small minority of cases and say it's okay for all. Okay, the vast majority, not over 92%, are because, oh, my boyfriend and I, yeah, we were being dumb and he got me pregnant. I I don't I don't want the kid. I don't want the kid. I'll just kill it rather than get up for adoption because there's tens of thousands of people wanting to adopt right now. Yeah, I'll just kill it. That's not okay. That's not okay. So yeah, it honestly should not. That's just my thing. But but then women say, oh, a woman has the right to do whatever she wants with her body. Well, it's not her. It's really not her body. It's another body inside her body, right? The baby's heart is connected to the mother's heart. They don't have the same arms, legs. It's a body inside another body. So, I personally don't like it. It should not be legal. I'm not a fan of Roe v. Wade. Yeah. So, okay, now here's the thing. Number 9. This question comes from Lennis. Why is it usually the aim of conservatives to support big corporations rather than the small businesses? Okay, thank you for the question, Lennis. Here's the whole thing with that. Is that, so with I wouldn't say conservatives don't support small businesses. We do, okay? There's when it comes to the private sector and the public sector. The public sector is government-run businesses such as the horrific DMV, U.S. Postal Service, etc. Conservatives, we like limited government. We don't like government per se. We like limited government, so therefore we don't. So no, but big corporations do fall under the private sector, and same with small businesses. Small businesses are responsible for the majority of jobs created in America, and big corporations tend to support conservatives more because we support lower taxes, and Democrats want to tax the hell out of big corporations like. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and other Democrat candidates want to tax big corporations 90%. No. So, big corporations do provide jobs. We do support small businesses. So, I like the private sector better than the public sector per se when it comes to jobs. But we do need government jobs, such as example for police and firefighter and stuff. But anyways, I'm getting economics. But really right now we do support small businesses and big corporations. Because we do in other events. Donald Trump, gave tax cuts to, there's tax cuts he gave back in 2017. Those also helped out small businesses too. Helped out corporations and small businesses too. It gave a tax break to them as well. So so we do support small businesses and big corporations. So conservatives do support small businesses. Just let you know. Thank you for the question. All right, last question comes from Cali. Why doesn't Nancy Pelosi give the articles of impeachment to the Senate? Thank you for this question. I'm so glad you asked this. So, here's the thing. Nancy Pelosi knows that the Senate's going to acquit Donald Trump, right? And here's the thing. The whole impeachment thing has just been sham impeachment. First off, for those of you watching, Donald Trump has actually not officially been impeached. He got the votes to get him impeached, but Harvard Law professor Noah Feldman points out that since Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, has to give the articles of impeachment over to the Senate before he's impeached, for its official impeachment from the House, Nancy Pelosi has not given the Senate the articles of impeachment yet. So it's been like what 24, 25 days, and Nervous Nancy still hasn't given it over because she knows the Senate's going to acquit him, and then it's going to make the Democrats look bad. And, they already look bad impeaching him. While the Dems, through this whole impeachment process, Trump's poll numbers and approval ratings have actually gone up. Because everyone knows this whole impeachment thing is just a sham. So the Democrats know they're going to make themselves look even worse if they give it over to the Senate and they acquit him. So that's why she's just playing the waiting game. And Nancy Pelosi, you suck. Okay, so anyways, that's all we have time for. For those of you who want to have a question answered live on the show, go ahead and you can send us an email down in the below at tmshow20@gmail.com. Or, like I said, if you haven't already followed the Instagram page, then you should now, and you can send us some direct message there, and we'll answer your question live on my show. And anyways, that's all we have time for. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time. I'm Tucker Meyer. This is The Tucker Meyer Show.